As much as you or I might love science fiction, for some people, even the mere mention of it is a turnoff.
Yeah, right. What do you know?
I know you're a huge nerd of Potsy-like proportions and no chicks dig nerds.
But sometimes, science fiction slips through the cracks and reaches a wider audience without them realizing it. These are the biggest sci-fi TV shows that tricked even the sci-fi skeptics into watching. And I'm ranking them in order by which show was the biggest hit. When Quantum Leap debuted in 1989, it wasn't pitched as a sci-fi spectacle. It was a heartfelt drama with a high-concept hook. Each week, Dr. Sam Beckett leaped into someone else's life, from a baseball player to a civil rights activist, forced to fix a problem before moving on. That premise let the show disguise itself as anthology storytelling, closer to Highway to Heaven than Star Trek. But the core was deeply sci-fi. Time travel, alternate timelines, and a supercomputer guiding the mission.
Ziggy's a hybrid computer.
Hybrid computers and neurological holograms didn't exist in 1956.
Only in theory.
But this is 56.
Well, it is for you, but it's not for me.
Viewers didn't care about the science, they cared about Scott Bakula's performance and the emotional payoffs. At its peak in Season 3, Quantum Leap averaged around 11.4 million viewers a week, a solid hit by early 90s standards, and its pilot Genesis drew nearly 15 million. By grounding wild sci-fi ideas in everyday human stories, the show lured in audiences who thought they'd never watch anything about time travel. Airwolf was not highly rated for most of its run, but for its premiere, the show tricked half the country into watching by debuting after the Super Bowl in 1984.
On Airwolf, tonight, following 60 Minutes.
That earned it 27 million viewers who stuck around. Sleek, black, and loaded with weapons, Airwolf looked like the fantasy toy every kid wanted and the military machine every adult secretly admired. For most viewers, it felt like pure adventure television, yet the helicopter itself was science fiction through and through. It could fly faster than jets, carry impossible firepower, pull off maneuvers no real aircraft could touch. Audiences weren't asked to buy into aliens or time travel, they were simply told this cutting-edge prototype existed. That framing let millions of sci-fi skeptics tune in guilt-free. They thought they were watching an action drama, but the star was a machine that only belonged in the realm of science fiction. The rise of streaming has resulted in audience segmentation that makes it nearly impossible for any show to earn a broad audience. And yet, Stranger Things has done just that. It's incredibly hard to track exactly how many people watch the show. Netflix is deliberately obscure with its numbers, but it's safe to assume that Stranger Things has an audience well over 15 million viewers. Part of the show's appeal lies in nostalgia for its setting. The series nails the 80s better than any show before it has.
Phil Larson called, said some kids are stealing the gnomes out of his garden again.
Oh, those garden gnomes again. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna get right on that.
Another key dynamic is its character-driven storytelling and emotional arcs. Siblings, friendships, small-town dynamics, which attract viewers who might otherwise skip a sci-fi series. Its blend of suspense, humor, and horror keeps engagement high, proving that Stranger Things can succeed on cultural cachet and relatable drama, not just genre conventions. Person of Interest sold itself as a crime show. Two guys stopping violent crimes before they can happen.
Machine gave you another number.
The numbers never stop coming. You should know that up front.
On the surface, it felt like another CBS procedural built for people who didn't care about sci-fi. But the engine driving the series was pure genre, an all-seeing artificial intelligence predicting human behavior. Week to week, the show leaned on detective work, fistfights, and moral dilemmas about privacy and justice, enough to keep mainstream audiences comfortable. At its height, more than 17 million viewers tuned in, most of them probably thinking they were just watching another twist on Law & Order. Yet across 5 seasons, Person of Interest evolved into one of television's most ambitious sci-fi stories, exploring AI ethics, machine consciousness, and the future of surveillance. It tricked millions into binging a cautionary tale about humanity's reliance on algorithms by disguising itself as a straightforward procedural until it was far too late to quit. Knight Rider was sold as an action show, not sci-fi. The pitch wasn't, man teams up with sentient AI car. It was, David Hasselhoff drives a badass talking Firebird while beating bad guys.
Well, listen, guys, I hate to mention this, but I'm heavily trained in martial arts.
Martial arts!
That distinction mattered. Audiences in the early 80s weren't ready to sign up for a show about artificial intelligence, but they were more than happy to watch a slick car chase bad guys every week. Kids' technology, self-driving, indestructible nature and a sarcastic wit was decades ahead of anything real, yet the series never lingered on the sci-fi implications. The result, solid ratings, a pop culture icon, and kids everywhere wishing their car could talk back. Back in the 1970s, the $6 million man made cybernetics and bioengineering part of America's primetime routine, without most viewers realizing they were knee-deep in science fiction. Astronaut Steve Austin is rebuilt after a crash with bionic implants that give him super strength, telescopic vision, and the ability to run 60 miles per hour.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology. We can make him better than he was.
But the show was framed like a straight action drama. Each episode leaned on spy plots, rescue missions, and Cold War intrigue, the kind of stories audiences were already comfortable watching. Ratings soared, regularly placing the show among television's top 10. Millions who might have laughed off laser guns or aliens spent 5 seasons glued to a series built entirely around speculative science. When Lost premiered in 2004, it hooked viewers with the promise of a survival drama. On the surface, it looked like Gilligan's Island with a serious streak. But week by week, the show peeled back layers that pushed it firmly into science fiction. Polar bears roamed tropical jungles, a smoke monster stalked the castaways, and underground bunkers revealed strange science technology. By then, the audience was already invested. Nearly 24 million tuned in for the Season 2 premiere alone. People who thought they hated sci-fi stuck around because the heart of the show was always its characters and their tangled backstories. By the time time travel and alternate reality showed up, the sci-fi haters were too deep in their obsession to turn back. The X-Files never presented itself as a sci-fi show, it sold itself as a mystery. Every week, Mulder and Scully investigated strange happenings, and the hook was less aliens are real and more what the hell is going on here.
Am I to understand that you want me to debunk the X-Files project, sir?
Agent Scully, we trust you'll make the proper scientific analysis.
That framing pulled in millions who would have rolled their eyes at a straight-up UFO drama. At its peak, nearly 30 million viewers tuned in, not because they wanted science fiction, but because they wanted answers. The show's genius was its flexibility. One week it was a creepy monster hunt, the next it was government conspiracy, then a deadpan comedy. The sci-fi DNA was always there: extraterrestrials, genetic mutations, black oil, but it was camouflaged under FBI files and horror tropes. The truth, as the tagline promised, was out there. The most popular show on television was unapologetically science fiction. On paper, Alf should have been too weird to work. A wisecracking alien puppet crashes into a suburban family's garage and never leaves. But in the mid-'80s, it wasn't marketed as science fiction. It was just another sitcom about a quirky outsider messing with the nuclear family dynamic. Alf ate cats instead of lasagna.
You got a cat?
You eat cats?
But otherwise he was Garfield in a Hawaiian shirt. Viewers weren't tuning in for an intergalactic backstory or the fall of Melmac.
What?
Melmac. That was the name of my planet.
They were there for domestic comedy, pratfalls, and one-liners. At its peak, nearly 39 million people watched Alf, putting it in the same league as iconic shows like Cheers and The Cosby Show. The alien setup gave the writers room for absurd jokes, but the show lived and died by its sitcom rhythms. When V hit television in 1983, it wasn't marketed as sci-fi. It was an event. A 2-night miniseries about mysterious visitors arriving on Earth. It played like prestige TV before that phrase existed. Audiences who would never have tuned in for spaceships or ray guns showed up in droves. Around 40 to 50 million people, making it one of the most watched sci-fi broadcasts in history. What they got was a thinly veiled allegory about fascism, wrapped in lizard people disguises. But in living rooms across America, no one cared about genre labels. They were hooked by the tension, the spectacle of motherships hovering above cities, and the creeping paranoia that the neighbors siding with the visitors might be collaborators. By the time the masks came off and the aliens were revealed as carnivorous reptiles, the audience was already invested. The trick with Mork and Mindy wasn't spaceships or time travel. It was Robin Williams. As Mork, an alien sent to observe Earth, he was a force of nature, spontaneous, hilarious, and strangely relatable.
Work? Well, yes, most people have to work for a living. What a novel concept.
The sci-fi setup was thin, just enough to justify the character's oddball behavior, but that didn't matter. At its peak, more than 60 million people watched, a number bigger than most Super Bowls today. They weren't watching for lessons about alien cultures or speculative futures. They were watching to see Williams unleash chaos on an unsuspecting Boulder, Colorado. The alien premise made it sci-fi, but it felt like a sitcom about relationships and misunderstandings. It tricked audiences who thought they hated the genre into embracing a story about an extraterrestrial everyman. They laughed first, and then realized later it was science fiction.
Until next week.
No.
Wish the average NCIS viewer would give shows like The Expanse a chance? Then you're watching the right channel. Support us by subscribing and letting those people know what they're missing in the comments. Until next time, I'm Josh, and this has been Giant Freakin' Robot. Nanu!